So, hello everyone, and welcome back. And what's on tap for today? Well, as you can see, it is a picture of a story that was absolutely incredible. It was a great win for the United States Armed Forces back in 2003 when Saddam Hussein was captured by Delta SEAL Team 6. At that time, it was led, I believe, by Army Chief Master Sergeant Kevin Holland. Well, what we've got on tap for you today, folks, is an exclusive that Kevin Holland gave to a podcast. And he basically revealed some of the inside secrets of the capture of Saddam Hussein. There's a small little video from that podcast of which we're going to show you. It's about 20, 25 seconds. I think it's pretty interesting. And after the podcast, we'll go into some of the background material that he gave. It's the first time in over 20 years that someone has really talked about the inside baseball of the capture of Saddam Hussein. So don't go away. We got so much more to talk about. And if you haven't already done so, we'd like you to subscribe. You're watching the Dr. Nasir Shaikh Show. I'm your guest host for today. My name is Dr. Shaikh. And like I said, hit that notification bell, like, share, and follow us on YouTube. We'd really appreciate it. Let's go to that video right now. So here you've got Kevin Holland, and here you've got Jack Carr, who's a former Navy SEAL, and he's got his own podcast called Danger Close. And the phenomenal thing about this is that as they started talking, he basically just started giving out some information as to what happened with the capture of Saddam Hussein. So let's listen in on what he had to say. Just a very short clip.
Yeah, well, I mean, not right at that moment, because he was pretty beat down, and I mean, he was. He said he was
getting that banger.
Well, he just said he was the president of Iraq, and he's ready to negotiate. He said that in English. Oh,
All
yeah.
right.
Yep. Yeah, and we're like, well,
time
that
to
time's passed, brother. And one of the guys told him, said, well, President Bush sends his regards.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So as you can see right there, I think that's absolutely phenomenal. He said, I'm the Iraqi president, and, basically left it at that. So let's go here to see some of this background information. And so here we are right here. So he was a former member of Army's secreted Delta Force. And remember at that time we saw the pictures of Saddam Hussein as he sort of came out, disheveled hair and everything. So basically what happened was about last month, Army Sergeant, Master Sergeant Kevin Holland, he spoke about Hussein's December 13th, 2003 arrest. And as we said, it's the first time that an American has done so in nearly 20 years. Now, the unique thing about Kevin Holland, I mean, he's a very, very well decorated soldier. He's the only known soldier to serve in both the Navy's Elite SEAL Team 6 and the 1st Special Forces Operational Detachment-Delta. Now, Holland on this program offered never before heard details to former Navy SEAL Jack Carr on his program, Danger Close. And he basically revealed how they found Saddam Hussein in an 8-foot hole with a gun inside. And they said that basically what happened was after restraining, Saddam Hussein, they told him President Bush sends his regards. So here's that picture again. Saddam in cuffs. Here we are at that sit down with Jack Carr, Kevin Holland, David Winkler. I guess they were also, these guys are designing knives and axes and all those kind of things. I think it's one of their business that they have. So basically, he talked about how he came to join the SEALs, how he grew up on John Wayne watching the Green Berets, and how he was watching, Rambo with a Winchester, that 30-30 Winchester rifle. And he said that's what the gun that he grew up in, with. And his background was a Green Beret, and that's what he wanted to be. So anyways, he decided to join the SEALs. He eventually joined the Hallowed 6 team. And then he joined the Army's equivalent, the Delta Force. Now take a look over. Here's another picture. I wonder what these guys were thinking, folks. I mean, can you imagine? Remember the deck of cards that the United States government put out, the army or whatever it was, and they had 52 decks, and Saddam Hussein was the ace of spades. And every once in a while in the news reports, we'd find out, oh, the 10 of spades has fallen. Oh, the ace of hearts has fallen. They gave each person within the Iraqi army establishment, the hierarchy within the government, people that they wanted to obviously, capture, put away. And obviously, Saddam Hussein was the ace of spades. So, this is a great, great picture here of Saddam Hussein. Obviously, they put the hood over his head as they're taking the picture. He's got his hand around him or whatever. Just a classic, classic picture there. So, anyways, as he's talking, he goes, I don't know if we can talk about it or not. And we'll edit it out, Carr said, who is the person who has a podcast called Danger Close. And so he basically talked about what happened in that small town of Ad-Dwar. And then how did they actually find him? And how did they get the information? So Holland says is that they received human intel about Saddam Hussein, his location, and they basically found him in a small hideout near a farm. Now, the thing was that this farm only had one road coming into it. And the Iraqis who were still loyal to Saddam Hussein were stationed along that road hiding. And as soon as if they would have seen a vehicle or anybody approaching, obviously that wasn't Iraqi or friends, they would basically scurry about and go back to the farm and report to Saddam Hussein. And if they had time to move him out of there to another location or, whatever else need to be done. Anyways, so they said that when they spied this hole, it just had a bunch of, dirt on top of it, some styrofoam, some, brush, some branches. And that was, pretty much it. Here's another picture. So Kevin Holland is really in the story. He said there was this big styrofoam plug, and they just put it there, covered up with just leaves and dirt, and they just had a small pipe there for air. And he said we noticed it when we cleared it. They just said they just dug it away, pulled it up, and the sand basically just fell in. And then he goes, in goes a banger. So they threw a hand grenade inside there. That's basically how they first cleared the hole. And he says once the dust had cleared, the team came face to face with basically, this huge hole in the ground. And eventually Saddam Hussein, comes crawling out. So, I mean, it's just an incredible story here. And he said, yeah, the lights on their guns, when you looked at it, you could tell, you could see the bricks where they had bricked it all up. And as they attempted to flush out the subterranean layer, they tried to tell the dog to go in, but according to Holland, the dog was too scared to enter. So he goes, once they pull the dogs back, they start hearing somebody talking Arabic, and the interpreter starts talking back. And it's like this voice, someone's coming, the voice is getting closer, it's getting closer, and then suddenly hands come out of the hole and a big bushy head of hair. So he goes, they grab him up, they jerk him out, and basically they pull him out of this 8-foot deep hole, and they're like basically, holy cow, it's him, it's Saddam Hussein, the ace of spades. And he basically went on to describe how at that time Saddam had been armed with a handgun. So what happened was is that he only referred to this guy as a big Texan, but he said this guy who's called a big Texan, he just hit Saddam Hussein right in the mouth. He just nails him in the mouth, knocks him down because he's got a gun, he's armed. So he wanted to make sure he couldn't get that gun. And now the story behind that gun is that it's a fully automatic Glock 15. And guess who has it now, folks? President Bush. That's right. President Bush was presented that gun, the Glock 15, that was the gun that Saddam Hussein had and whatever. They said he was pretty beat down. They had the interpreter that was talking with him. He said he was the president of Iraq and that he's ready to negotiate. All right? He's ready to negotiate. He said that in English. And he goes, we're like, hey, buddy, hey, that time's past, brother. That's a quote. That time's past, brother. And then afterwards, he's telling us the further story that they went down into that um, holding cell where Saddam Hussein kept, and they're describing that underneath bunker. So he descended, and some of the soldiers were too big to fit into that small hole or whatever. So, anyway, he goes, one of the guys tried to go in, couldn't get inside there. It's too big. So he jumps out. He goes, I jump in, which is Holland saying that. He has his 45. He looks down. He goes, they got my flashlight. And at that point, he goes, one of the soldiers with the underground hideout, they said they had multiple pathways and there were blind corners. So he goes, give me another pistol, Holland says. So the guy hands me down a Glock with a light on it. All right. So after Holland's down there, so after clearing one corner, he finds himself in a small area where he says that's probably where Hussein was hiding in that cavern or this little dugout, shelter there. He goes, it was just enough room. It was like a 6 foot area for a guy to lay down. He had a little bench that he could sit on. In regard to how low the ceilings were, he said you could stand, but your head would stick out of the hole. But he said, despite the lack of standing rooms, he said it was surprisingly, habitable. I mean, he says it was nice for, being underground. I mean, you go down, it's brick, the ceiling's got beams, and it's parts, there's cement on top of it. There was a fan there, and he saw in the video, and guess what? It was on Fox News. So he had a electricity coming in. He had a TV over there. He was able to capture, obviously satellite, and Fox News was on. So he goes, he got a camera, he took a video of everything. He's telling and talking about how it all looks down there, and he can lay down inside there with his boots sticking out. And he says you can see it in the video. Here's another picture of where, when they pulled Saddam Hussein out of the hole there. And he said, they asked him, how do you think, Hussein survived, for that long? And he goes, well, he was never really there for any extended period of time. It's what they're getting from the local intel. And he said that the Muslim politicians, the Sunni Muslim politicians there, also had guards who doubled as cooks. They were captured in a nearby hut. So he'd be in the hut all day. And if anybody decided, he's coming down the road that obviously is not friendly, they'd jump in there, cover him up, and basically that's what happened. So he was living in this hut. When he needed to hide, they'd put him down inside that bunker. Anyways, they basically, once they captured him, I guess it was obviously some debriefing, and from there by helicopter, they flew him back to Tikrit, to the palace, where he was obviously going to be, go on trial for crimes against humanity. And here's a picture of this multi-million-dollar, you see it's all blackened now, but this was all gold encrusted, folks. This was millions of dollars. It was a statue of Saddam Hussein that was pulled down after the world knew, and the Iraqis there that were fighting against him knew that he was captured. And they just basically, now this is the type of thing, these are the type of statues probably that you need to put on. But then again, you could take a look at it and say, if you put on these statues and there's no historical record that's up there saying how evil this guy was, well, hundreds of years down the road, people are going to tend to forget because history has a way of rewriting itself, right? There's people always there trying to rewrite history, revisionist history. We've seen that happen over here. So sometimes, you have to think and say, what, we need to have our history written. We need to have our history available for us to see, even those patches of history that may be dark and that we don't want to see and we don't want to talk about, but we need to, so that those situations, those things, don't crop up again. They don't rear their ugly, evil head anymore. And we can point to and say, see, that was evil at that time, and that evil was defeated. So, there is that, folks. There is that. So he's also talking about what was the demeanor of Saddam Hussein when they captured him and after he was gone into hiding. And they were months, remember? They were after him for months. All he could say is that he could feel, Kevin is responding, that he said he could feel that evil persona that was inside this guy. And he had this presence that he said that was about Saddam Hussein. He said to Kevin Holland, even though he's this soldier, he's been around, gunfights and in battles and everything. But he said there was an evil presence that he could sense. And he said not only that, but every once in a while he was being restrained, he says Saddam Hussein would sort of, reach out with his hand every now and then to touch one of the soldiers or whatever. And actually, he says one of the guys, hit him in the back of the head and tell him, hey, listen, quit touching the people. Just keep your hands straight. And he was saying as he was flying the helicopter, it wasn't like he was going to do anything with his hands or that he was going to jump out of the helicopter or anything like that. It was just very weird, he said, in that he kept, when our hands were there, that he was, touching us or whatever. So that was kind of strange. Anyways, he goes on to say that we said, that evil presence, but he said no one really wanted to hang out with him. I mean, they did take some pictures, obviously, with him, but he said nobody really wanted to hang out with the guy or be in there with the debriefings or anything. But he said that once Saddam knew that he wasn't about to be killed, at least at that point in time, he said all of a sudden you could see his persona change. In other words, what happened is that initially, obviously, he got captured. He's probably not had food for some period of time, not had some water for some period of time, and obviously maybe a little bit dazed and confused or whatever, and obviously probably fearful of what's going to happen to him. So he said that persona changed once he realized that he wasn't going to be killed. He said he was back to that same old, you know, Saddam Hussein, and he said that he basically said that he was back in charge. And then all of a sudden he had this distinct air about him. And again, he said that presence of evil that he felt, it just seemed to intensify once he had that bravado back that he was the president of Iraq, even though he was, being captured or whatever. He says he still tried to explain it. Kevin's still trying to explain it because I can't really explain it except that there was this aura around him that was evil. And it wasn't just him, it was the other soldiers in his unit. And they also said that they felt, that presence as well. Here's a picture, of Kevin. A great picture, a great patriot, great hero, folks. That's really a nice picture. It's a great picture. A great poster. He's been deployed over 20 times to the Middle East, over 2,000 missions, retired from the SEALs in 1999. But after 9/11, he was encouraged. He went back and re-entered the service. He served as an assaulter with the Delta Force for roughly 10 years. And basically, one of the reasons why he felt that he needed to come out and talk about this is that there was a previous account by an Iraqi interpreter last year about Hussein's arrest. And this Iraqi interpreter was working with the US military. But this guy says he wants to remain anonymous. Okay, I can understand that. But then I'm just wondering, what was the reason for this Iraqi interpreter to basically contradict what Kevin Holland and his team said had occurred? Because the guy wanted to stress that Hussein wasn't in an underground den, but he was in a room and he was most likely praying at the time and he was wearing his traditional Arab robe. And he said that the notion that by the Pentagon, or the story at that time, that he was cowering in a pit at the time of his arrest was fabricated. Now, obviously, the Biden administration has yet to comment on those claims, and they're probably not going to. But it's just one of those, it's just a great, great story, that's out there. And it was a great win at the time for the United States Armed Forces, a great win, obviously, for President Bush at the time, and a way for which an evil dictator who killed, hundreds of thousands of Iranians and hundreds of thousands of his own fellow countrymen. We've heard the stories of the mustard gas up in the Kurds and just the special Iraqi police force that would round up anybody, the tortures, the murders, the false trials, all those things that he and his sons did. And the billions and billions of dollars. I mean, there are palaces and homes of his that were around the country that cost folks not in the millions of dollars. We're talking in the billions of dollars. Palaces made, all this oil money, everything inside there. So, just again, an unbelievable story, a great hero, a great patriot, a great American, Kevin Holland, Jack Carr, with his podcast, Danger Close. Anyways, folks, we certainly appreciate you taking the time to watch. You've been watching the Dr. Nasir Shaikh Show. I was your guest host for today. My name is Dr. Shaikh, and I'll leave you with, can't forget, subscribe if you haven't already done so. Hit that notification bell, like, share, and follow us. And I'll leave you with my final thoughts, and that is when you're right, and when you're left, you're wrong. See you again next time, folks. Take care and stay safe.